Okay, we might make a start. Good morning, everyone. Very nice to meet you all. My name is Ben Jamison, and I'm the founder at Crawl Walk Run. We are an Australian-based Attio expert organisation, and we help companies set up, configure, optimize, and integrate Attio. I've been in the CRM consulting space for over 10 years now, but I set up this organisation because I was a little bit disenfranchised with some of the older legacy CRM platforms that you might be familiar with. Came across Attio and was incredibly impressed by the capabilities of the product, and more on that later. But I was really excited by the potential of that solution for the businesses that I was working with. In terms of the presentation today, we've got a QA running and we've got some time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So feel free to drop any questions you have in chat as we progress, but we may as well make a start. So first of all, where I thought I'd commence the presentation today is just to talk a little bit about my own background and where I've come from in terms of my own professional journey. So even from a very young age, I was a real tinkerer when it came to tech. I was that child growing up that would do silly things like put his Vegemite toast in the VCR player at home, causing all sorts of issues for mum and dad. I think another time, from what I've been told, I used Windex to clean the TV at home, which then led to the channels getting stuck on the television. Dad was pretty happy with it at the time because it was stuck on the sports channels, but mum was not too happy with that because she could watch nothing over the course of a hot summer. And I've also, taken part in every beta program you could think of pretty much at this point. But certainly with AI, things were a little bit different for me. And upon reflection, I think one of the main reasons for that was at the time that these technologies were emerging, I was in a very customer facing role that had a lot of kind of focus on high quality results. So I gave it a go initially, but I found that back then the quality just wasn't there. There was a lot of obvious signs that the content was authored by AI. And I saw some colleagues who were early adopters probably pushing the technology a bit too hard, and they were arguably delivering lower quality work than they were before and spending a lot of time kind of playing around with prompts and not really getting anywhere. And I just couldn't find a way to integrate it into my work. So I kind of ruled it out early on as something that would not fit all that well into my workflows. But as I started this business, things started to shift and change for me. That time balance and that ability to manage, sales activity as a founder versus business operations and project delivery was really quite challenging for me. I've also got a young family, two little girls, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So squaring away some time for them is also really important to me. So I started to push myself to explore what else was possible, and I was really pleased with what I found. Attio has just got tremendous capability when it comes to automating workflows using AI. And I was able to save a lot of time in terms of my week-to-week activities and get that time back in terms of my work. And I think one of the main reasons why I had so much success with it is just the rich amount of context that's available within an Attio, but also the tools that come within the platform as well. So some of this you may already be aware of, but Attio automatically records all of your emails that you're sending and receiving from your customers and your prospects. And that's true not just for the content that you're sending, but it's also true for your colleagues as well. So within the CRM, you're getting this complete picture of everything that's happening within your business. Equally, meeting recordings are also stored within the system too. So on every conference call that you're on, an Attio agent will join the conversation. You'll get a video recording within the system and a full transcript. And that is all something that the AI systems that I'll show you in a second can leverage too. Beyond that too, you also get those, I guess, more standard CRM elements around a configurable data model that you can tailor to your different workflows. And then, your notes and tasks and things like that that you're managing as a part of your day-to-day. Attio comes with a great AI assistant called Ask Attio that you can leverage to automate workflows within your organization, perhaps carry out tasks, analyze information, generate insights, that sort of thing. So that's incredibly powerful if you want to do things on the fly. The system also has some great automation and workflow capabilities that you can use to automate workflows. Beyond that too, Attio has some really powerful AIs that you can leverage in order to connect external business systems through to the CRM as well. And anything that you bring across into Attio is also something that you can run AI-related processes across. Beyond that too, Attio also has a really rich library of third-party apps that can be leveraged in order to get even more information into the CRM. And then in addition, Attio also has an MCP capability, which is just phenomenal when it comes to connecting Attio to the large language model of your choosing. So if you're using Claude or ChatGPT as a part of your standard daily workflows, it really opens up a lot of possibilities there. In terms of what I'm going to cover today, we've got more of a sales-oriented example. So I'll show you in a second my pitch decks or sales proposal documents and how I put those together using AI and Attio. But I'd encourage the entire audience to also think about other potential use cases as well. So the possibilities are pretty broad here. You think about everything that Attio has access to in terms of that rich detail. You've absolutely got the potential to use this technology for things like perhaps your contracts that you're generating for customers. Maybe you have an onboarding or a welcome pack type procedure. This sort of thing could be used for that, absolutely. Things like handovers from your sales team to project delivery teams or customer support are also really good candidates. Perhaps as a part of your sales cycle, you're partnering with prospects to put together a business case in order to get a deal across the line. Another really good candidate. One thing that I do regularly within my own business is analyze the conversations that I'm having with customers to look for really good quotes or excerpts from those conversations that I can use as the basis of maybe a case study or a social post on LinkedIn, that sort of thing. And the system is really great at finding those little nuggets to help you, get some great insights and things that you can work with there. And then finally, there's also the operational side of things. So the potential to use this for day-to-day business around things like maybe status reports. Perhaps you have a process whereby you're putting together documentation around project delivery or things like that. So the possibilities, as I said before, are really broad for this. So please get creative and think about the possibilities. And I'm happy to field some questions on what's possible there at the end of this conversation. So in terms of our demonstration today, we're going to step through 3 scenarios, starting simple and then getting a little bit more complex as we go. And the idea with these is we're looking for that low-hanging fruit to start with, but then we're looking for ways to introduce more and more automation into the process. So initially, what I'm going to do is walk you through how I started in my own journey using Ask Attio, and then going a bit further with that, leveraging the Attio MCP with your favorite large language model. And then finally, a completely automated workflow whereby you can simply press a button within the system, generate a document, and maybe have a message go out through Slack or MS Teams or something along those lines. So as I said, where I started in my own journey was just playing around with the built-in AI assistant within Attio called Ask Attio. As I mentioned, the key to all of this is really that rich amount of context that you get within your CRM. And the visuals here really help to understand what's possible there. So every email that goes back and forth with your customers and prospects is stored within the system. Again, that's not just you, it's also your colleagues, so really great and helpful there. But then in addition, you're also getting full meeting recordings and transcripts that the AI can also analyze. So in terms of how I approach this myself, I started with fairly simple prompts that got a little bit more sophisticated as I went along, but I usually started with something along the lines of what you see here. So the instruction I'm providing to Ask Attio is some background on my company and what I want it to do. So you work for an Attio implementation partner called Crawl Walk Run. We help businesses set up and configure Attio. We provide integration services, ongoing support, etc. I provided the customer name, and then the ask was based on the recent meetings and email conversations I had with them, put together the first slide of my proposal deck, which normally covers 2 things: a summary of what we've heard from the customer in our conversations, and then some bullet points on their ideal target state. Some instructions in there around how I want those to be formatted, and then I would ask the system to draft that out for me. And what would happen is it would go off, process my request, and give me the output that I was after. And then I would need to manually copy and paste that into my document. So this was a great start. Saved me a lot of time, probably 45 minutes or so for each document that I was putting together. But I was really keen to see how I could take things further and do a little bit more. So the next step for me was to leverage the MCP capability that Attio has recently released. As I mentioned, this is where you can start to connect your large language model to Attio to get some insights and automate workflows. So Within Crawlwalk Run, we use a product called Claude for a lot of our workflows. So in my case, what I did is I connected Claude to the Attio MCP, and I also used Zapier and its MCP capability to help me produce the Google Docs via a template. A few things to note regarding this. Obviously, if you had a different LLM model, you could introduce that into this workflow as well. And then the other thing to note is I realize a lot of the organizations that are on the call today are likely set up using Microsoft for their document generation. If that's the case, arguably the process is even easier. Claude Cowork in particular has some really great capabilities for producing Microsoft Office documents. So this process and building it out may be even easier for you. So in terms of the various elements here, as I mentioned, setting up the Claude MCP capability is that first step. So the process involved in setting that up is really quite straightforward. You go to your settings menu in Claude, open up connectors and browse the library of connectors and search for Attio. Once you've got that logged into and set up, the configuration process for this app is really quite straightforward. In terms of what you need to consider, it's mostly permissions related. So what I normally suggest for my customers is all of the read-only capabilities, things like analyzing call recordings, getting email content, searching records. Generally, it's a good idea to set that to always allow so that the system doesn't prompt you every time you want it to do some research and look into your customers and their history there. The MCP also has really great capabilities when it comes to writing and updating content within your CRM. But with this, I'd normally suggest, at least initially, you're a little bit more cautious with it. What I'd normally suggest is setting the system up in such a way that there is a approval required prior to those updates being made. But things like tasks, for instance, that are a bit less sensitive, you could set those up to always carry them out without the need to provide approval on each prompt. So in terms of how all of this comes together, I think the best place to kind of paint a picture and give you a bit of an idea is to start with my sales proposal template. So this follows a fairly standard format from deal to deal. There might be a few little things I tweak here and there, maybe some extra slides I add to the deck, that sort of thing. But the nuts and bolts of it remain fairly consistent. So as you can see here, the first slide is always our logo, summary, and then the customer name. And you'll note throughout this presentation, we've got these squiggly brackets, which are merge fields that we can leverage Claude and Attio for in order to insert content into this document. So they're really placeholders for the inputs that are going to go into this. The next slide, as I mentioned before, is around a summary of the conversations to date. So talking through what we've heard in the conversations from the customer, and then also a summary of what they're working towards and what they'd like as their ideal target state. We then have a page which is focused on deliverables. So this is where we would list out all of the things that we're going to complete in the Attio project. There is, I guess, a foundational set of activities that are really, really consistent and we tend to do on each and every project. But then in addition, each customer's needs tend to be a bit unique. So they might need some additional workflows or perhaps an integration of some kind between Attio and another business system. So the Claude capability that I'm leveraging would analyze the conversations to pull out what those deliverables would be and then add them to this section of the document. And then finally, we also have a slide for commercials and costings, which is basically a summary of the total number of hours associated with the project, and then a total cost in Australian dollars, which is calculated based upon our hourly rate. I've certainly had a lot of success with getting Claude to provide an initial estimate for this as well. Usually there's a little bit of tweaking that needs to be done, but it's pretty close to the mark generally. It's able to go through and summarize the effort involved against each deliverable, and then I can sense check that prior to sending. Moving ahead to the Zapier MCP capability that I mentioned before. So again, this is probably only required if you're using Google and Google Slides or maybe Google Docs. But there's a rich set of capabilities in here to allow you to do things like creating a presentation from a template. So this is the element that I'm using to take those merge fields and insert the information into it. And then moving ahead to Claude, this will give you an idea of how I would run this process once the setup was in place. In this case, what I've got here is a project with some context around what the proposal generator is supposed to do. But then I would copy and paste in a prompt like this each and every time and make some tweaks and changes. You could also set up a skill for this if you wanted within Claude, or something similar if you're using an alternate technology. But the idea is you're creating something along these lines, bit of background on the task, the business, and what you want the AI agent to do for you. I would always insert the customer name, and then there would be a consistent set of instructions. So in this case, it's using the Attio MCP connector, review all the calls and emails for the above customer from the last 4 weeks. Once reviewed, use the Zapier MCP connector to create a Google Slides presentation from this particular template, replacing the placeholder fields with content derived from your research. So you can see here that these placeholders match the merge fields that I showed you before. And what I've got here is just a quick summary of what I'm after across each of these inputs. With respect to the deliverables here, as I mentioned, they are fairly standard from project to project, but there is the ability to insert additional tasks in here, and I'll provide some guidance for the AI around how to do that. And then some instructions relating to formatting and things like that as well. And then some guidance around how to carry out estimations. This is not an exact reflection of the prompt that I'm using within my own business. There's some, I guess, commercially sensitive information in there, but this will give you an idea of how you can create a prompt very similar to this for your own organization. So when all of this was ready to go, it's just a case of hitting the send button on this particular prompt and the process would run. It does take a few minutes to complete, so rather than keep you all sitting here, there's an example that I've prepared earlier. And this is what it looks like. So as you can see, we've got that title slide that we were looking at before. The customer's name has been inserted in there. We've got some really rich content that it has added around what we've heard and that target state. Those deliverables have also been populated, along with some additional detail around once-off processes that we're doing here, additional integrations that the customer has asked for, as well as some extra workshops that are going to be required. And then finally, we've got that commercial summary where the system has estimated the total number of hours in the build, and it's given us a total as well. So that was great. It was obviously saving me a lot of time at that point, probably 2 to 3 hours a week. But I wanted to push things even further if I was able to and come up with a fully automated solution. So in this case, I needed to tackle things slightly differently. I needed to use the Attio APIs and Zapier to a large degree in order to extract the information that was required, send it through to the Claude API, and then leverage Claude to produce a Google Doc for me, and then send a notification via Slack when the process was completed. So the way that this gets initiated is on a deal record within the system. There is a button I can press. So if I jump across to Attio now, this is what it looks like. On any deal record, I can just jump up here to the Run Workflow option and select the option here to generate a sales proposal. So that process will run in the background. And what it's going to do, if I have a look at the workflow itself, is when that button is pushed, a simple webhook action is going to trigger that will send some information, very, very basic stuff, through to Zapier. And it will include things like the customer's name, the record IDs that Claude is going to use in order to prepare a prompt that can be leveraged to analyze Attio and give me the information that I need to populate those merge fields. So if I jump across to Zapier next, you can see what this looks like. So the first step is Zapier will receive that information from Attio. Just very basic stuff at this stage, customer name, links to certain records, that sort of thing. And then once that webhook is received, the next step is there is some custom code that we've written, some JavaScript that grabs that information, merges it into a prompt, and sends that across to Claude to complete. And then once Claude has carried out its research, it's looked through the calls and the emails and all of the relevant records within Attio, it will then return those merge fields back to Zapier, and then Zapier will insert them into Google Slides. And then finally, to end the process, there'll be a Slack message which is sent to me in a certain channel within my system. If I jump across to Slack now, you can see what this looks like. Without needing to lift a finger, I've now got a nice little message which has arrived for me with a gentle nudge to say that there's been a new proposal that's ready to go. There's a link to the document if I want to open that, and a summary of the hours and the investment for the customer. I can just click on this to open it up and have a look at the contents. And as you can see, we won't go through it again. Very similar to the example that I showed you before. Instead, that this time it's completely automated, and I'm probably saving 4 or 5 hours each week on these documents now. So that concludes, I guess, the demonstration and what I was keen to work you all through today. Obviously, again, I'd just encourage you to think about the possibilities within your own organizations, and don't just limit yourself to sales scenarios. Also think about internal operational stuff as well, and things that might be unique to your business. But there are a few things to kind of keep in mind as you're building these sorts of workflows. So one thing I'll mention is that more context you can add to the prompt on the task and your business and that sort of thing, the better your outcomes will be. So I'd suggest really thinking about that carefully upfront to ensure that things are well considered, and probably test it a few times before you operationalize it. A couple of things I'd suggest you think about is including examples of expected results. So if you've got a really polished document or perhaps a sales artifact that has had good results in the past, literally copy and paste the various sections into your prompt. And that will give the large language model an idea of how you style your communication, the expected outcomes that you're after there with respect to that information. Another really good thing to consider is the concept of guardrails. So this is where you've got the ability to clearly explain to Claude or ChatGPT what you don't want it to do. So that might be being really explicit around not using M dashes or any obvious signs of AI. It could be that there's certain language or tasks that you want to make sure that it doesn't mention in the outputs. That's where you can refine and make sure that no mistakes are made there. Another thing to keep in mind is there's obviously a proliferation of different AI models available in the market at this stage. I would definitely suggest, especially if you're producing customer-facing materials, use a really strong model for the best possible results. So for my business, we invest in Claude Opus for a lot of the documentation that we're producing and the API credits there. And we find that that investment makes a lot of sense as it improves the quality of the sales artifacts that we're putting together. But even with that, and these models are probably the worst they'll ever be and will continue to improve, I would still strongly suggest that you proofread every single document prior to sending, especially in the early stages when you're putting these workflows together. It's important to keep in mind that on occasion, and I'm finding this is becoming more and more rare, the AI can get confused or hallucinate. So you would really want to double check things before you send anything off to a customer. So that's it in terms of the workshop today. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. I do appreciate it. I'll pause for a second now and just see if there's any questions from the audience. I've got Andrew here helping to manage the Q&A. Andrew, you might be on mute. Have you got any questions that have come through?
Yeah, I think one question I had is what other kinds of things can you produce? Like, can you produce, can you connect something like Notion for us folks who use something that's not in the Google Workspace or Microsoft Office space? Have you been able to create things like HTML documents? Like, how far can we push this thing?
Yeah. I mean, the really exciting thing about where these technologies are at is that the possibilities are really quite broad. A lot of the tech vendors out there are introducing their own MCP type capabilities. And then these large language models with things like Claude Code are becoming more and more sophisticated as well. So there's a really broad number of different tools and technologies that you can integrate to. Notion is one really good example that you provided there. I use a task management tool for my own day-to-day called TickTick, so I'm also using that a lot of the time. And then you've also got the ability to create your own custom apps too. So a lot of people are leveraging these AI models to put together, custom HTML pages. Maybe they want to do things like create custom reports on information within their CRM. There's just loads that you can do at the moment, which is really, really exciting for me as a technology professional. Is there
Yeah.
any other questions, Andrew, or is it time to wrap?
We do have a question from Miss Salish. Is there a free trial? There is actually. So I am actually I've been in the background, solutions engineer, part of the Attio team. You can go to the Attio website, and on the top right, you can sign up for a free trial directly. We also have another question from Christian. So this is a question about the workflow, and the question is, can we generate certain email templates based on more sources of data than Attio? So the data sources being mentioned are Attio itself, a internal knowledge base, and maybe even files that exist in some other storage place, such as OneDrive.
Yeah, definitely. I think those sorts of things are certainly possible. You are a little bit dependent on the either API or MCP capabilities of some of these technologies. But there are some kind of great, I don't know what the best word to describe it is, maybe brokers or aggregators that are out there. Zapier is one good example. N8N has also got some good capabilities there as well that you can also leverage to create those connections. So if you want to bring across data points from multiple systems, you can leverage those technologies to do that as well. A lot of other organizations, in addition to that, are keen to bring information from other platforms. Maybe it's a customer support system or something along those lines into RTO as well, so that they're available for day to day CRM related activities, but also for these AI related workflows. I mentioned before that RTO has a strong API capability. So, an alternate approach might actually be to integrate those systems through to Attio and then use the systems and solutions that I showed you to run these sorts of workflows. Just depends on the technologies that are in the mix and what's possible there.
Looks like we have one more question coming in from Kevin while he is typing. But one other question I had that may be helpful for the audience is, what is exactly MCP and how is that different from API? Because there's a lot of three-letter acronyms floating around these days.
There is. So an MCP is a model context protocol. To explain that as simply as possible, it's a facility that allows a large language model to better understand the application and perform activities within it. So it basically provides Claude or ChatGPT with some guidance around how to do these things effectively as possible. I think we had one other question. Is that right, Andrew?
Yes, Kevin, we're looking for your message. We'll wait for that one.
No
And
rush, Kevin. Happy to wait.
no rush.
By all
Okay,
means, if there are any further questions that come to mind after this session, I'm sure both Andrew and I are happy to answer those. So feel free to reach out.
definitely. Just to highlight on the slide, we do have Ben's contact information. So give the QR code a scan. Alternatively, if you are already using Attio in some capacity, feel free to join the Attio.community. And you can leave a comment there, and our team will reach out to assist. So I'm putting Attio.community in the chat. With that said, Kevin, no worries. We'll read your question aloud as the final question today. So the question goes, with cloud storage integrated to records, is there a way to use this pre-existing relationship with Claude, or is it better for Claude to, I guess, connect directly to Microsoft 365 through their MCP?
Ooh, that is a good question. I would think, from my perspective, I'd encourage you to use the native MCP connectors probably as a preference. So I would start by using the native connectors initially, alongside the RTO one as well. But this, I'm sure, will continue to emerge and change over time. So I'd suggest continuing to monitor this one and experimenting with different options. Andrew, I don't know if you've got anything to add with respect to that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The reason that when it comes to this use case of generating personalized documents, the value of using the direct MCP connection is that ultimately each software solution creates the MCP that allows AI to talk to that specific piece of software. So, when possible, rather than going through your AI to the software and using the software through some other background linkage, sometimes it's more clear that you have AI speak to each source directly, then perform the step of synthesizing all of that context into one digestible document?
Some absolutely phenomenal questions from the audience. It's great to see this engagement. Obviously, you're all thinking about what you can do within your own organizations, which is really neat. I think that might be all of the questions. Is that right, Andrew?
Yep, looks like that is all the questions for today.
Excellent. Well, everyone, thanks again for your time. I've really enjoyed getting the opportunity to showcase some of what I'm doing within my own business. This is a space that, as I've mentioned a few times, will continue to change and evolve. So I'd encourage you all to continue to experiment and have a play within your own organizations. But if at any time you want to reach out and have a chat around ideas we might have for your setup as well, more than happy to have those conversations. So thanks again for your time. See you later.